Hello.
Hello.
How are you two doing?
Excellent. Thank you.
End of a busy school day, teaching children, and tears and excitement, and
That's all from me.
yeah.
Lovely. My day has been less exciting. We got our sewers roto-rooted out. That was the excitement of my day.
That's pretty exciting.
It's very, very exciting in a nerdy way, I think. Hi, everyone. Welcome. Welcome to Coffee Up First. The idea of these sessions is to bring amazing experts to you, our wonderful audience, to get an idea of the people behind the screen, who they are, what they get up to. I'm Amanda B. I am the content creator, English content creator, sorry, for ScienceUpFirst. And I'd like to begin today by starting with a land acknowledgement. I am joining you today from Lethbridge, Alberta, Canada, which is Sikokitoki, located on Blackfoot territory, named the Siksika-i-Sadabi, the Blackfoot Confederacy. Today, 4 nations make up the Siksika-i-Sadabi: the Guyanai, the Abadozi-Bagani or Bagani Nation, the Siksika, or a nation, in southern Alberta, as well as the Amskapi-Bagani or Blackfeet tribe in northern Montana. As both the traditional and current land keepers of this area, the Blackfoot nations have welcomed people from other Indigenous territories, including all signatory nations of Treaty Number 7, members of the Métis Nation of Alberta's Region 3, and non-Indigenous peoples who have come to call the city of Lethbridge home. I encourage everybody here to take a moment to reflect on the traditional territories on which you live and your relationship with them. And now I would like to introduce my guests. Very excited to have 2 drag superstars here today with us, Fay Slift and Fluffy Soufflé, who have been doing Drag Storytime since June 2016. They're based in Toronto, and they've been fortunate to do many local events at some of Toronto's biggest cultural institutions, such as AGO and the ROM, as well as hitting the road for adventures beyond Toronto in small towns and other big cities. Their special events focus on books, songs, and include lots of laughs to show that reading can be fundamental. They especially support families with 2S LGBTQIA+ parents and gender variant children, as well as including culturally diverse books, and they provide a supportive and inclusive environment focused on fun. In addition to all of this, it's a lot, they also have their own television show on Family Junior, which is called The Fabulous Show with Fay and Fluffy. Welcome, you two.
Hi.
That's a mouthful to get through, but I'm really happy.
I think you need a vacation from after that.
Thank you. I appreciate you appreciate that. Well, let's get talking to you. You've both been doing drag for quite a while before Fay and Fluffy, and then that kind of became the journey that is Fay and Fluffy. So did you both want to start off by telling me about your drag journeys separately and together?
Absolutely. Mine, I feel like, has been a journey since I was 2 years old, because I feel like I have been performing gender for my whole life. When I was born, I was identified as a girl, and when I was 2 years old was the first time that I told my mom that I'm a boy, and that was a while ago. That was a few years ago, quite a few years ago, where we didn't really talk about anything back then. There was no discussions. There was certainly no TV shows, articles, science people looking into this sort of thing. So just kind of, went under the rug. And I didn't actually come out again until my late 20s. I was trans, but I did start in my early 20s as a drag king. And this year, actually, 2013 or 2023, whenever we are, is 20 years since I was in a drag king calendar.
Wow.
So that ages me quite a bit. And then I moved from Victoria, where I was living, to Toronto. That's when I decided to socially transition. And for me, that led to medically transitioning, which is certainly not what everybody chooses to do. And it is no requirement of being trans, of doing anything to your body, or even socially. It is entirely up to each individual person. So I decided to medically transition, and then kind of like, I don't really want to be a drag king anymore. It didn't feel like it fit me. A lot of trans people do continue to perform in drag in various ways. And so after a few years of just performing kind of generally, doing dance numbers, kind of acting, doing sort of burlesque stuff, then I decided I'm going to try being a drag queen. And I did that, and around that time is when I met Fay, who had just started kind of right before me, about a year before me. And then Fay's partner is a incredible makeup artist and photographer named David Ha, and I joined a competition in the gay village here in Toronto, which is not a place that I even hung out with. In Toronto, it's kind of, there's the gay village, and then there was kind of queer west. So the West End felt a lot more my style. But I joined a competition there, and they said, this is great, but we'd love to see you do real makeup. And so I had David do my makeup for the first time, which then that led us to being official drag siblings. So that's how our kind of relationship was cemented. And then I asked Fay to perform with me in that competition, and that started us performing together. And then from then on, it was going. And it really just lucked out that naming ourselves completely separate ended up being this beautiful, complementary names of Fay and Fluffy, which is, a great thing. Neither of us had any, sexually charged names or.
And a lot of people, my drag name is Fay Slift, and I was given that name by my husband, David Ha. He is a photographer and a makeup artist. He's just sort of a creative jack of all trades. And so a lot of people didn't know that my name is a facelift, right? So Fay Slift. And the funniest thing would be, I started doing this, I'm going to say 2007 at Buddy's in Bad Times Theatre here in Toronto. And a friend was having a night and asked if I would perform. I'd never done it before, but the year previous, David had painted both of us to go out as these identical twins with these little bolero jackets and big hair and
JP and David.
Yeah,
not the two of us.
Not the two of us. I hadn't met Caleb at that point yet, but I was performing at this night that was happening at Buddy's in Bad Times. And Caleb came, and that's sort of the beginning of it. And Caleb introduced me to the Scandals, and we performed and did stuff there. And we sort of been, we do things together. We've hosted things. We've done stages at Pride. We've done things at the Gladstone Hotel, the previous iteration of it, not the current one. And we just have a connection. So I think what comes across through what magically happened due to inspiration from Michelle T, who started the very first Drag Queen Storytime hour in San Francisco, and it sort of beautifully grew from there. And I had been doing things with my kids performing at Pride and wanted to do more, very open and honest with my kids about the fact that Fay is a character that, I created with my partner, and it's fun and it's great to dress up. I mean, that was sort of it. And so the evolution of Fay Slift was really inspired a lot by the kids I taught. And I've taught grade 6 all the way down to kindergarten. And so the colors and the vibrancy and the music everything was kind of joyful because it was being inspired by the kids who I spent my days with. And so it just sort of whatever. So when I read this, I saw this video about Drag Queen Story Hour at the San Francisco Public Library. I was like, I had just finished doing my literacy specialist at Boise, and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is a perfect blend of these things. And I reached out to Caleb, obviously, because I was like, Caleb's background and working with kids and caring and running their own daycare and stuff. I was like, this naturally, us reading stories to children, it's like panto. It's going to be so much fun. And so it really started for us, not as a political thing or anything. We were like, we want kids to love story time. And we're like a pair of clowns. And so it was about sharing that love of literacy and encouraging creativity and imagination. And then it became we had a lot of friends within our community who were having families, and the work I did. And so we started really advocating that we were creating spaces that were inclusive and safe. And that's really what it is. We're not about excluding. We're about embracing and celebrating difference, because why would you want everything to be the same? You know, it's like, that's kind of boring, you know? So yeah, that's sort of how we started doing it. And it's just kind of grown, and yeah, it's been incredible.
I really love that you two had those names separate from each other, and it just kind of became this beautiful thing. Because obviously, like, just talking to you both the last few times, you have a very similar energy, and it just always reads in everything you do how inclusive you want everything to be. So I think it's so cool that you two found each other. Really neat.
Us too. Yeah.
Maybe
Absolutely.
for our next question, maybe we could just do like a real quick, I know we can't get into the history of drag in one conversation, but yeah, just for that's watching that might not have a full kind of idea of the art form of drag has kind of evolved.
Oh yeah. Drag has been around for hundreds of years, literally. It's not new. You can look back at even in our own lifetime of Bugs Bunny dressing up in drag, of Mrs. Doubtfire, of the movie Tootsie, and so there is so much that has happened. And if you look back at the history of drag, also language has changed. So at some points in time, some people that did drag might have identified as trans were they here today. They might be non-binary. There might be other identities intersecting in that. But it did kind of come out of the gay movement of dressing up, and it's entertainment at the end of the day. Like, that is the difference of trans people and people that want to just live their lives, and people that do this on stage and want to perform and entertain and delight people, which is exactly what we do. So yeah, it's been around.
It has.
Forever,
I mean, historically,
Shakespeare.
Yes, like, women were not permitted to perform. Like, and we're not just looking at a European perspective. We're talking worldwide. Like, so I mean, it was men performing as the female roles in whatever performance was being presented. And it just really, I mean, like, think about, like, Milton Berle. Like, I mean, this is not new. During any of those USO tours, there were often performers who did drag. It's pantomime. It's play. It's play. And we all, you know, and I will say this, how many people do we all know who lose their mind at Halloween? Like, they're just the idea of, like, I'm going to be Superman, or I'm going to be a Teletubby, or I'm a carrot, like, whatever. It's, like, wonderful to dress up and play. Like, have some fun.
And so that's exactly what we do. We dress up. These are our characters. I mean, I am going to make a point to, there's a comment left on the ScienceUpFirst page, and somebody who's probably not here, because often it's people that don't actually want to listen and learn. But somebody said, why do all of them look like Cruella de Vil? I was like, okay, well, Cruella de Vil is also amazing. So that's not really an insult. But I want to comment on that because there is no one look to drag. There's no one gender to drag. There's no one identity. So now we've got a beautiful representation of what drag is. There are queens, there are kings, there are people that identify as drag things, and everything in between. There are tons of non-binary drag performers. There are performers who have beards. There are performers who are trans. And so right now, there is no one look to what drag is. In the same way, there's no one look to what trans is. So we can see examples of RuPaul. You can go to your local, queer bars and stuff and see that. And that was important for us, was to take drag out of the bar, because it is for everybody. It is also for children, because it is entertainment. It is two people dressed up as characters. Yeah. Kids don't go see Bluey and go, well, how come my dog isn't blue and doesn't talk? Yeah. And kids can acknowledge that there is characters.
Yeah, children have, I speak as an educator of 27 years, children have the most expansive, accepting minds because they get it.
Yeah.
They get it.
This comment also said, isn't this a very poor representation of what a woman actually is? To be clear, neither of us are doing this as representations of women. Yes, there are absolutely some people who want to do female illusion. And, you know, and that is great. Some people do want to look like this beautiful, feminine creatures. Like, that's amazing.
Yeah.
That is clearly not what we're trying to do. As I have said recently, like, Fay is clearly not trying to be a woman. And I spent a lot of time and money not being a woman and transitioning. So that's also not my goal.
Exactly.
So the fact that like that the people claim like, well, you don't even look like women, and
okay,
we're not trying to be women.
We're characters that we created. We used our imagination.
Yes.
We were inspired by things. Like I was inspired by Divine and like just Dolly Parton, like big hair and over the top and this is stuff like when kids are little, they just gravitate to things in like within themselves. And who doesn't love wearing a cape? Having the wind lift it up and carry it on, and putting on like a fake beard or a mustache and big glasses and a hat, or putting on a towel so that you think you're Wonder Woman, you know, like children explore. Children are naturally creative. They're curious. And it's, why do we want to stop creativity and artistic expression? Like the world would be like, I mean, don't get me wrong, the world is
challenging,
extremely on the daily. But why would we want to deny the joy of discovering your own voice through your artistry and your creativity? Like children are just who they are. And our roles as adults in their lives is to care for them and celebrate them and nurture them.
Yeah.
And say we don't have all the answers. And that's a great question. Let's learn that together.
Yeah.
You know?
It's interesting because it seems like things like RuPaul's Drag Race have helped, I guess, bring drag to the mainstream, but they've also done a thing where it's kind of maybe made people's perceptions more into this little box of you have to be a fishy, you know, female passing person.
Which, again, even some of the language is based in misogyny.
Total misogyny.
And so looking at that, so that has come out of Drag Race. Yes, there's a lot of amazing things about Drag Race, and there are incredible performers. Yeah. But there's also a lot of incredible performers that don't do that show and don't look like that. And that's okay too. And I felt like when I started drag, because I'm not good at makeup, I was never good at makeup. I have no interest in makeup. I put it on because I kind of have to. But when I would go on stage, I felt like this trans person, this fat person, and this person who's not great at makeup can still do this. And so can you.
Mm-hmm. It's yours. It's drag is individual. And it's like there's so much space at the table. Like, so everyone come, find your joy in expressing yourself. Like, however that may be, whether you're a dancer or a sculptor or a drag performer or an author or a caregiver, whatever it is, like, just bring that joy into your life. Like, don't deny yourself that joy.
And don't deny other people that joy.
Exactly. Absolutely. Mind your business.
You could be grumpy yourself, but just keep it to yourself. Well, this is kind of, I guess it's in the same vein, but Fluffy, because you're a transgendered performer, I would want to probably direct this question more to you. There's been, you know, protests outside of Drag Storytime, anti-drag bans in some states, and just a lot of kind of negative been happening. For our audience, what are drag bans and how are they used to target transgendered people?
Well, it's pretty easy to look at the states right now and point fingers and go, well, look what they're doing, look what they're doing, they're bad. Like, and we kind of have this impression that we're sitting up here all pretty in Canada. But I mean, for a very recent example, you can see the CBC's The National that just aired this week that shows the physical threats that are coming at us, people coming to our story times. But when asked about the other side, it's muddy. There is no clear answer because what it all comes down to is a hatred of trans people. And so all of these legislations against drag are really just paving the way for legislations against trans people. So the drag bans saying, you know, oh, you can't be dressing as a different gender in public or in front of children, you know, who's to stop people that are gender non-conforming, gender creative, trans from just dressing that way and being stopped on the street? And that's where it's a slippery slope. And we are seeing it here in Canada. We are seeing the politicians using this as a platform. Coming up, there is the Save Our Children March, where on September 20th, next week, all of the legislature buildings across Canada are going to be inundated with protesters that are specifically protesting teaching trans education in school, banning drag story times, not even just trans education, but LGBTQ stuff. And we are not trying to make anybody trans. We do not want to, you know, change anybody's mind about who they are. And this is our big thing, is like, we just want that information to be out there, because for us as adults, we didn't have that as kids. And there's a lot of ways that things could have been a lot easier for us. I just want to say hi to our friend Frankie, who's joined us. Hi, Frankie. Frankie's one of our friends that we've met online and has come out to a couple of events. And also, Frankie just turned 21, which is exciting. So one of the ways, like, we go to these story times and we meet these kids, but we meet the adults and we meet teens who say, like, thank you for coming to my small town, because they don't get to see a lot of trans and queer and drag representation. I came out as non-binary, so Fluffy is a non-binary performer, which just really fit me perfectly. Just the way I felt. It felt like taking all the shackles off of representation of what I'm supposed to be. And so we went to a small town here in Ontario, and somebody came up and said, thank you so much for coming out as non-binary. It let me tell my kid that we're going to see somebody who's non-binary and uses they, them pronouns like I do. And so again, we are just reflecting the community. We are reflecting the world around the kids. We are not teaching them things that, you know, aren't happening.
Yeah.
We just want these kids to be alive.
Yeah,
adults.
That's it. We want them to thrive and to exist safely and to be proud of who they are, to be celebrated, embraced, to have community, to have people in their lives who love them. That's it. And may I just interject that add rather, not interject. I waited politely. I just want to speak to my experience and the majority of people who I know who are queer identified. Many of them were raised by straight parents. Many of them grew up with a mother and a father. And, you know, and yeah, I still turned out gay, as did my brother, who's younger than me. 2 of us out of 5 children were gay. And no matter how hard my father tried to really prevent that from happening, indoctrinated us within, you know, the confines of the Roman Catholic Church. I won't even get into that. However, the reality is, it seems like it's straight people raising gay children. It's straight people making us gay. So thank you for that, straight people.
Who people are at our core can't be beat out of us. No. And the very simple example is when we look at, as soon as left-handed people stopped getting beat for being left-handed, there was more left-handed people. Yes. As long as trans and gender non-conforming people are allowed to be who they want to be and their authentic selves and explore that, then there's going to be more of them, because they're not getting beaten and killed for that. Yeah. And
hi, Jeremy.
And it's
hi,
also,
Dad. Sorry.
And in that, it's just important to say, like, that can change, and that's okay too, because nobody is mutilating children. Nobody is filling children with hormones and drugs. And, you know, this is the science element of it, is that is categorically not true. Yeah. That is not happening. What we're doing is allowing children, because until puberty hits, children are the same. It doesn't really matter. And so children can totally be socialized as trans and help figure it out. Some kids will end up being trans and some won't. But either way, you're raising a confident, self-assured, like, child who knows themselves and was allowed that opportunity. Yeah. As opposed to one who was having their self-esteem beaten out of them, who was confused, who is going to eventually either not be in your life because they have unalived themselves, or because they're going to cut you out of their life. Yeah.
Yeah, it's so sad. And I think a lot of parents don't really realize that until it's almost too late and those relationships are damaged.
Yeah.
We've kind of gotten to a bit of this now, but is there any misinformation around drag story time that you specifically want to address that has been really harmful or just comes up a lot?
Well, one thing for a lot of the sort of the tropes that are going out about the grooming and predatorial and sexualizing, the reality is none of that happens at story time. It's events for families, for children, for adults to come. We have many adults who end up, stopping by with some of their friends because they wish they had it when they were kids. And so they have an experience with us that is joyful and happy and makes them think and, all of that sort of stuff. So what was I talking about?
The arguments against us,
yes,
which are that we're pedophiles,
yeah,
which we're not,
we're not.
That we're groomers, which if we take that word and say, are we grooming children to be confident, like aware, good people in their community, good people to their neighbors, good people to their family, proud of themselves? Yes. Are we grooming children? I don't even know.
To exploit
like
them?
if even
No.
the definition of that is like,
yeah,
it's not applicable to us.
Yeah, and all of those terms, I'll be very frank here, all of those terms actually apply to so many organizations and so many people within power of those organizations. Some of them are spiritual, religious, those political, those who are often the most vocal in their spewing of hate and rhetoric. I mean, it's really like sit down people living in glass houses, like it's projection. And these are the same tropes that were thrown around back in the day when, with gay people, like with gay men and with lesbians, they're predators, they're preying on us, they're doing this, they're sexualized. It's just like, no, we just want to live, leave us alone. That's it, we just want to live. Yeah. We want to live and exist to be, members of our communities. We want to thrive, we want joy, we want love, we want laughs. We want to really take care of other people. And so...
And like the comment about us like the sexualizing thing is really confusing to me too. This is us with an amazing kids band, Slash and Boots.
Yay!
This is for people who are entertaining children who are all in costumes.
Yeah.
They don't wear blue and yellow every day. They don't, have these outfits on every day. We don't have these outfits on every day. We are all children's entertainers.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right. I guess one of the things that we always try to do at Science Up First is our audience, because the more you're educated, the less you're likely to fall for ridiculous rumors and misinformation. So maybe you kind of walk us through, kind of start to finish, from you getting to the library to going. Like, what's a typical drag story time look like for you?
Yeah, it's super fun. We usually arrive in a side door, or sometimes we walk through the main front, but we don't arrive dressed up because sometimes we have to travel there, or it's uncomfortable to wear big eyelashes driving, and you can't wear our wigs. Yeah. So we usually just arrive as we are, and
sunglasses, hats, bags, our IKEA bags, our drag bags, which are from IKEA. It's like books that we have picked out, collaborated on together. We head in through a back door like we're cat burglars. And then we get in and everyone's so excited that we're there. All those librarians, all of the people that are working in the library, hi, they're so excited.
It ends up being, at the end especially, ends up being this big circle of thank you so much for having us. Thank you so much for being here.
We have
thank
a photo.
You so much. Thank you so much. And we're all
so
this
lovely
gratitude circle of thanking us. But usually a librarian will introduce us. Sometimes there'll be just something about their summer programs or their reading programs, maybe a land acknowledgement. And then we come in and we say, hi everyone, we're Fay and Fluffy Storytime. And then we talk a little bit, just kind of briefly about what we do. So literally we've been doing Storytime for this many years. We're not saying, this is who we are, and this is what's underneath here, and why, little secrets.
We're giving you the gay agenda. You all will comply. it's so
And then
ridiculous.
we sing our song that comes from our show, which is just about settling in.
Yeah.
And then we, in a typical story time, we'll read between 3 and 5 books. Usually, you know, on a regular time, we'll read 5 books. And there are a variety of books. So we'll usually have one about community, about welcoming others, about, you know, our neighbors, or all are welcome here. You always end with something fun like an elephant and piggy, or the book with no pictures. And then there's such a variety of books about emotions, or about all these different things, that maybe there might be one in there that is specifically kind of about somebody's different.
Yeah, but often the materials that we choose, and we have to say this first of all, huge shout outs to librarians.
Yes.
We adore you, because librarians are sending a very clear message when they bring us in, is that, see this space, you are safe and welcome here.
Yeah.
We love you, librarians. We'll just say that.
And that's what we say. We say sometimes we'll be like, oh, I don't know if we'll have many people come out. And we're like, it's okay. If you have one family come out, we're happy to read to that one family.
Yeah.
But more importantly, by you hosting us, it's showing that your library is a place where everybody is welcome.
Yeah.
And so that's why we have teenagers and adults come by, just to kind of come up to us afterwards and go, you know, thank you so much. Like, nobody ever comes to our town, or this and that. This is a great book that I've especially been loving this season. It's called Wildflower, and it's about this cute little daisy who meets other flowers and gets told that they're a weed.
Yeah.
And then they're like, you're a
weed.
weed, you're just a weed. And then at the end they meet other weeds who are just wildflowers.
Aww.
And they're like, yes, I do have a place here. And then they're very proud of that. And it's a way for us to talk about being proud of yourself and being proud of who you are.
Yeah. Why shouldn't we encourage people to be proud of who they are? We have a lot of people that wander this planet who loathe themselves because they have been taught that, and that's horrific. And we are encouraging, and as I do every day as an educator, I encourage, you know, us talking about things that we share in common, things that make us special and unique. Because I want happy, confident kids that go out into the world that share that with others, who know when to be like, no, boundary established, you don't treat me well, I don't have time for that, and walking away from that and being proud of their voice, knowing the power they have. We want kids to thrive and be alive and have joy. Like, that's it. Mm-hmm. And you know what, bigots? Storytime and us is not for you. So...
yeah. While we do say all are welcome with an open and kind heart.
Yeah.
And anything other than that, keep some distance.
Yeah.
Stay away.
Yeah.
So we read our stories. At one point, we'll always do If You're Happy and You Know It. And then we'll probably usually sing another song. And then we finish.
Yeah.
And then we sit there and we welcome kids to come up if they want to say hi or give us a high five or have a photo taken. It's always consensual. We always ask, may I give you a high five?
Every single
If
time.
we see a kid where the parent's like, go take a photo, and the kid, you know that they want to do it, but we'll turn it around and go, would it be okay if we take a photo with you? And the kid's always like, oh yeah.
Yeah, okay.
And then that often gets them.
Yeah.
But we have parents coming up just like handing us babies sometimes, and even we're like, oh, this was very, are you okay?
Yeah.
You okay?
Are you
You
fine
okay?
with
Are
this,
you okay with this?
8-month-old? And they're just like, like seriously, it's like, there's like the colors of us, bright orange hair, blue hair, the beautiful clothes that we wear, and all of those things. It's playful and fun, and little kids are always like, it's like, I know it's oversaturation. I get it. I totally understand.
And there's also the thing, now that we have the TV show, is also kids have seen us on TV, but kids have a different relationship to screens than we did growing up.
Yeah.
Because there is like talking to family now. So, you know, you see grandma on the TV and then you get to meet grandma. You see Fay and Fluffy and then you get to meet us. And then a lot of people don't understand, like, you don't get to see everybody on TV, but you know, we're right here.
Yeah.
And but we have a lot of pictures with babies where they're just staring at one of us.
Yeah. So we just have this banter that we have great chemistry together when we're together and laugh, and you know, it's just like we play off one another. We're like, we want the families, all of the members of the families that are there. whether they're allies or members of the community. We want all of them to have a laugh and feel great when they walk out. That's it. That's what happens at Storytime.
And then they walk out, and we expect those conversations to continue.
Absolutely.
So when they leave, that's when, you know, a kid might say, well, why did they have a beard? Or why were they wearing girls' clothes? And this is like, because we don't go through that. We don't talk about ourselves. We don't read books about, you know, about sex and gender. We read books, like, our main focus is an interest in literacy.
Yeah.
And then community, being yourself, being proud, all of those things.
Yeah.
But, you know, the answer to why are they wearing girls' clothes is they're not. They're wearing their clothes.
Yeah, they're our clothes.
So these clothes belong to us. We didn't steal them from a young
clothes
girl.
Don't have gender, just like toys and colors. Everything that is out there is for everyone to try.
So why not?
Exactly. One thing that's kind of connected to all of this that I would love to hear both your thoughts on. We haven't really come across the topic yet of allyship, specifically in counter-protesting. Would you both be able to kind of maybe speak to what you've seen that has worked for that, and like what the best way to go about that is, that's like positive and productive?
Well, I think attending our events is showing great allyship. We've got a dad here, Chris, who's brought his teenager Jeremy to see us several times, and great, thank you for the coffee. But we know that we're not only talking to LGBTQ families, but also they don't know who their kids are going to end up being. So what we're doing is we're talking to allies, and we are building this group of people who are going to accept others. And I think that's the biggest thing, is just giving people the knowledge and the permission and the exposure to different communities, whether it's like, oh, that's like my aunt, or I have an uncle who's gay, or, you know, this daddy lives with his boyfriend now, or all these kinds of things. So it's just, you know, again, a representation of what's out there and what's okay.
Reality.
And having those chats. So that's the first step of like building allyship, is just exposure to things that are different from you. White kids shouldn't only be reading books about white kids. You know, like that's already obvious. So in the same vein, kids shouldn't be assumed of what their gender is or is going to be, and should be reading a variety of books related to that. Yeah. So at the beginning, when we first started getting the protesters, I strongly felt like I didn't want our friends to come out. I didn't want counter-protesters. I didn't want people to come out and put themselves in the faces of literal Nazis.
Yeah, fascists.
And so I was really scared about that. But as time has gone on, and friends have kind of pointedly said to me, you need to let us support you.
Yeah.
You need to be open to allowing other people to do what they need to do. And if that is coming out to support you, that's what they need to do. So in situations that we've been in where there have been big protests, like in Collingwood and Wasaga Beach, there was an organized counter-protest group. Yeah. And there is a group called Drag Guardians. And it's a group that has gotten together that communicates. They are getting organized. They're like, I'm going to this Drag Storytime event. Who's going to be there? I've got this t-shirt made. We've got these posters made. And so they are organizing and they're coming out. Yeah. And it is very hard for me, and I won't speak for you, but to accept that support sometimes, because I don't want it. It scares me. I don't want the need for it. But as we saw in Mississauga, which was one of the most aggressive and violent protests that we've had, there were no counter-protesters. And what really scared me about that is all these families that were just coming out for a nice story time are forced to be activist allies. Yeah. They didn't ask to be in that position. They didn't come out with signs and this plan that they were going to be protesters. They just came out for a nice story time, and now they are forced to be activists.
Yeah. And I think they were also unaware of the fact that they just showing up, the act, that's what allyship is. It is the action of supporting. It's being present and taking up space that would prevent a fascist from taking over that space. So showing up is so significant. All of those families that came that day in Celebration Square in Mississauga, they were in the act of showing up there to come and even hear the two of us share stories and be silly and goofy. They are allies who are also activists, and it became brutally aware when the signage around us was like, stop sexualizing children. Those families are probably going to engage in those conversations about what that was about. That is activism. That is real, authentic stuff. And so even though it was so emotionally upsetting and enraging, and, you know, I'm very protective about my friendship with Caleb. I'm very protective about those families that were there. I am glad that not one single family member got up and left. And they could have.
Yeah.
And they stayed.
Yeah, so for the background for what happened that day is that when we arrived getting ready to do our story time outside, there was 3 women with signs. And so we're like, okay.
3 protesters.
Right. So we started our story time, we do our song, we start our book, and then they all started coming in.
Yeah.
And then we were surrounded. Like they came in, it was in a amphitheater kind of style. So they came in, they were standing in front of families, they were up at the back, they were yelling with a megaphone from behind the stadium. And so we didn't know what was happening, and it all kind of happened, which was quite scary. But if you don't have drag storytime events in your city or your town, doing stuff online is helpful. Having these conversations, so you're going to meet people that go, well, you know, I don't have anything against drag, but it shouldn't be for children.
Yeah.
If you actually look at what we do, there's no reason why it shouldn't be for children. If you look at photos of us, if you think that it's sexual, that's on you, babe.
Yeah.
Because that ain't on us. And so allyship is often online, and that's okay too. It's sharing information, it's debunking these myths, and it's speaking up. There was one person on the other side who said, you know, when asked, what is your ultimate goal? Like, what is your end game? And the end game is for us and drag story time to end and to be forgotten and wiped from people's memory. And that's not even a possibility. No. So the argument is there is no end game for them. We're just going to keep doing it because families love us. We won a Canadian Screen Award recently for the show, and the one that we won was the Kids' Choice Award. So families had to actually go through the effort to vote for us, which is incredibly, like, just floored us.
Yeah.
And it was wild. So these are the ways that people can be allies, whether you have kids or not, is, you know, buying books that celebrate diversity and giving them to kids in your life.
Yeah.
And then just, showing some pictures of us so that you see that it's okay that you can have a beard and be in a dress. It's okay that you can be a boy and paint your nails. Yeah. You know, we have dads that come that have their nails painted. We've had generations of like a grandfather and then his son and then his 2 grandkids that all came out. And, you know,
when we were in Wasaga
they might not
Beach,
get it, but that's okay. They're there.
Yeah, because they want to get it. And when we were in Wasaga Beach, what was incredible that day in particular was these members of the local council. They showed up, including the mayor, to come and just sit and listen to us and engage with us and take photos. Like they asked, can we have photos with you? You know, meanwhile outside, these people who are likely more, you know, connected to the convoy and who are anti-science and who really have, you know, erupted since the onset of the COVID pandemic. And you know, like they're outside with these giant signs that, you know, that say F Trudeau on them. And, you know, it's like they've got Bible quotes that don't necessarily make sense. I was raised a Roman Catholic. I had to go to religion 3 times a week. I mean, I was at mass every week. Like, I was fully indoctrinated, completely indoctrinated. I wasn't asked if I wanted. There was no consent on my part. So that's what indoctrination is. What we're doing is spreading joy and, you know, really shining light on the fact that diversity is reality.
Yeah.
And as an educator, children, when they see themselves reflected in stories you're sharing, it makes them feel less isolated. It helps them see themselves in ways that they may never have thought of. Children deserve to see themselves as heroes in their own lives.
And see their families.
Absolutely. Every single one of them. Because at the end of the day, there are no two families that are the same. And the thing that ties us all together, what should tie us all together, is the love in a family. That's what makes a family, whether it's chosen, whether it's biological, whether people are adopted, whether it's extended, whether there are step families involved. Families are their own unique things.
And again, you might not understand it. That's okay.
Yeah.
You might not understand why your kid wants to transition and be a boy and then wear skirts. That's okay. You don't have to understand it.
Yeah.
But if you love your kid and you want them in your life, you're just going to say, okay.
Yeah.
And you're going to go with it.
Yeah.
Could I ask you too? I don't want to keep you for too much longer because I really appreciate it. But I would love to get some of your tips for having discussions both with your children and with other adults just around gender in general. Just really positive and to open up people's minds. Like, what are some good approaches?
Well, I think definitely always coming from a perspective of, like, you know, the idea that adults know everything, adults don't know everything, and being honest and saying, hey, you know what, that's a great question. And I want to know too, because I don't actually know the answer. Why don't we do that together? That's a great starting point.
I think we've learned a lot. It's kind of been drilled into us at this point is that, like, gender is a binary. There's male and female, and then there's non-binary. But I think that we're beyond that now. I think we need to open that up and recognize that gender is actually this beautiful universe, and people are going to find themselves wherever they are in there. It's not just like, well, what are you? Are you 20% male and 80% female? It's like, no, let's take all that off the table. Yeah. Let's look at each individual. You never know somebody's pronouns unless you ask them, because gender presentation does not equal gender identity. So we know some very high femme, glamorous looking people that might be non-binary. We know people with full beards that might look like the trucker at the gas station who might be non-binary. And that is what is great about things. And that's what these kids today are saying, like, well, why are these adults all stuck to blue being for boys and pink being for girls?
Yeah,
like
100 years ago, it was flipped opposite.
Yeah, it's over. It's over again.
Yeah.
So one point, I recently saw a great documentary called Summer Camp with a Q, and it's looking at Camp Firefly, which is in Alberta. And it's a beautiful thing, but there's one of the kids in it, and all these kids are incredible. If you have a chance to see it, please see it. But one of the kids is talking about, who's neurodivergent, is saying, well, I don't get why people are saying that, this is masculine and this is feminine. And it was somebody there dressed in, like, I don't even know, in a dress and kind of like goth, but like punk, but looks feminine, but identifies as a trans man. And that's the thing, like, they don't get these rules. And we're kind of like, that's the way it should be. Like, why are these rules? Yeah. They're kind of arbitrary. Yeah. And they're kind of socialization.
It's a colonial construct. Its time it's over. I mean, this was all brought in. Like, if you look at the legacy of Indigenous communities, the vibrancy across the spectrum, it was embraced and it was heralded. And if you look at cultures everywhere that unfortunately were conquered through colonialism and, genocide, they tried to wipe it off the map. We're all still here. People are still thriving. And it's not narrow. It's not this tiny little idea that you think it is that was brought over based in some sort of form and history of oppressing and terrifying people. It's like, no.
And kids are still getting that information. Mm-hmm. So even my 8-year-old niece, who is just incredible and knows me, knows Fluffy. Some of them will make art and be like, do you want to be Fluffy or do you want to be Caleb? Do you want to be wearing a dress? Do you want to, like, when drawing pictures of me? But we'll still say the pink Kinder eggs are for the girls. So like they still get that messaging as much as we are trying to be like, no. Yeah. So I think just reinforcing that, if you see somebody who is maybe expressing themselves in a different way, or gets a new haircut or has a new style, complimenting them on it. And if your kid's like, well, why does she look like a boy now? Well, I don't know, maybe they're experimenting with different things. Why don't we do a check-in? So checking in with your kids to be like, how are you feeling? how's this feeling? How's this pronoun feeling? How's this name feeling? And being okay with a kid being like, I don't want to be this name anymore. And that's okay. They might come back to it. They might change it. Who knows? Let's be open to that. And I think the same with adults is, again, it's like, if you want to be respectful, that's what should be first.
Yeah.
You understanding they, them, doesn't matter.
Yeah.
You can figure that out on your own.
Yeah.
Start referring to your animals as they, them.
Yeah.
Read storybooks and change the pronouns in them.
Yeah.
There's lots of ways that you can practice, because a lot of people may not have a non-binary friend in their life. So it's hard sometimes to even just accidentally misgender somebody. And what happens if that happens is to go, oh, sorry, and correct it and move along.
Yeah, that's it.
What happens often is allies will feel terrible. I've had to look into people's eyes who are crying because they misgendered me. But the right way to do it is just go, oh, sorry, and then move on.
Move on.
That makes everybody feel so much better.
Yeah. Way better.
Thank you, Chris.
I don't want to keep you too much longer. Is there anything that we haven't had a chance to talk about that either one of you wanted to say before we wrap up and do pick, or what is that called?
I'll say from like my experience as a teacher. I have been a teacher for 27 years. I've been teaching kindergarten now for the last 8. Follow your kids' lead. Be honest, be vulnerable, admit, apologize when you mess up. Ask if they accept your apology. Tell them that, you know what, I don't know the answer to that, but let's figure that out together. Like, seriously, a child who comes from an environment that is supported and loved, that kid is going to thrive because they have that support at home. They don't need to go searching for it elsewhere. They will ultimately find that too within the communities that they come across, brought through maybe by their parents or through their friendships at school, whatever it is. But just really listen. Be a listener and be vulnerable. Just own up to the fact that you just want to support them as best they can, and give them some space too, because they're still trying to discover and figure it out. But just through your actions of being present and attentive is such a powerful, powerful thing.
And if you're worried about your queer or gender nonconforming or trans kid going out into the world and being bullied and being, attacked or having a lot of negative attention, then don't you want your home to be the place where they feel safe,
100%.
Where they can breathe and let their shoulders relax and know that they are loved and accepted no matter what?
Yeah.
That's what we want. Because we can't change the world, but we can change maybe one person's, one people's. That's good science, right? But coming up, CBC, The Nature of Things, is doing an episode about gender fluidity. And so again, it is a science look at the reality that in nature and in communities, there is a lot of gender fluidity that is accepted and normal, and that's okay. So there are examples that are coming out now about the mental health of trans kids and non-binary and gender non-conforming kids, and about, because so much has been said about those kids' misery and depression and wanting to unalive themselves, but that's when they're not supported. So when we look at the ways that kids are supported and loved and accepted, that is going to be more similar to cis children who are accepted for who they are. So that's where we're at. We're at accepting your kids is the #1 most important thing. Yeah. And if you want to be a parent, you're signing up for that for life.
And gender affirming care saves lives.
Yeah.
And I'll say this, I, taught all these years, and the last 8 years, I have gone from being a person that was terrified of science because I just didn't think I was like, ooh. I was a creative, artistic person. I had to just be that. But since teaching kindergarten, the children's curiosity, everything they ask is based in science. And I have fallen in love with it. And I love teaching science. I am so grateful for scientists. I'm so grateful for the idea of that No, everything is not the definitive answer.
No.
The reality is the science evolves and it gets
Yes.
better. And that's what's amazing about scientists, because they are driven by their curiosity. I'm surrounded by that every day with little kids. So I love science. I believe in science. I support science. I am fully in love with science.
And science changes as we learn more. That's what it's all about. It's not science was wrong.
Yeah.
It's about we learned new things.
Yeah.
And that's what's incredible.
Yeah.
We are evolving our language. So why wouldn't we use different language in terms of gender and pronouns and that kind of thing? And people that say, oh, whack, like if a teen is going to kill themselves because we use the wrong pronouns, then that's on them. Why aren't we looking at mental health? We actually are. Like, kids don't just get to decide to change gender and then go get surgery and get on hormones.
Yeah.
Like, they are always supported by mental health professionals.
Yeah.
And so that's so important, is that, no, but if we continually punch down at kids, and if they see in the media that their lives are threatened, that their rights are being taken away, that potentially their doctor might not be able to prescribe them hormones, that their teacher, they can't go and consult with their teacher because their teacher will have to tell their parent, who might not be accepting at home, then those are the problems.
Yeah, horrific. Totally the right-wing Christo-fascist playbook. I mean, this continues to happen and happen and happen. And honestly, it's like we need to be vocal, we need to stand up, and we need to celebrate reality. Like, you know, we are not going backwards in regards to excluding people because it doesn't fit your narrative. Our existence, the existence of all those kids out there, those families, ain't up for debate. We are here, and that is that on that.
Yeah. And trans and gender nonconforming people belong to all communities,
Absolutely.
all religions, all types of people.
Yeah.
So there's no pointing fingers. We're not all like that Spider-Man meme of like pointing fingers at each other.
Yeah.
We all need to work together and work a little bit harder to support the kids.
Gosh, you guys are just the greatest. I just love you. Oh, thank you so much for coming and talking to me today.
Thank you for having us so much.
Is there anything either one of you wants to promote while you're here?
Read books. Support
books.
small bookstores in your communities.
Yeah, and watch The Fabulous Show with
Fay and Fluffy
on Amazon Prime, on Family Junior,
and
available on YouTube.
And we're also going to, I'll get a list from you two afterwards. We're going to put up a resources page on our website when we post the video on there. So anything that you've mentioned today or anything else you think of, we'll just have a whole big list of stuff that people can look at.
Yeah, and people can check out our Instagram as Fay and Fluffy, and we share a lot of the books that we love. We share art from kids. We share photos. And it's always a safe place for families and kids to go and scroll through together.
Yeah.
Amazing. Well, thank you too. And thank you again for taking time out of your day to talk to us. And thank you everyone for watching. What a great talk this was.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks for everyone who showed up.